timing, Bob. What do you make of this?
Well, look, remember that Quanta is one of the biggest ODMs, original device manufacturers of PCs in the world. So this is not an unusual move for Apple to be working with Quanta. The timing clearly is a bit odd that they're doing something just as all these tensions are going on. But remember, this is a very low volume product. Very few of them are actually made. So it doesn't have a big impact psychologically, clearly not. It doesn't look very good.
Right. Carolina, talk to us about the potential message this is sending to the U.S. administration and the world.
Well, I think that if you remember when they made the announcement, we were originally about the Mac being assembled in the U.S., not manufactured in the U.S. We were right at the epicenter of the whole made in the USA is a great thing, is a good thing. And now, as you both point out, we're at the tensions between the U.S. and China. Reality is, from a volume perspective, this is so low that moving the assembly part to China doesn't impact work opportunities in the U.S. A lot of the components that are used actually in the Mac will be manufactured in the U.S. But from a supply chain perspective, China makes a lot more sense, and it always has. So if there is a signal and a message, if you like, right now is that Apple still wants to keep the relationship with China. But I doubt that that's the driving decision-making part of this move. And it's just logistical needs and best opportunity for them.
We do have a statement from Apple. Like all of our products, the new Mac Pro is designed and engineered in California and includes components from several countries, including the United States. This is the sort of familiar refrain we hear from Apple when these manufacturing stories popped up. We're proud to support manufacturing facilities in 30 U.S. states, and last year spent $60 billion with over 9,000 suppliers across the United States. Our investment and innovation supports 2 million American jobs. Final assembly is only one part of the manufacturing process. That said, they reportedly had trouble finding skilled workers who would work for minimum wage in Austin, Texas, where this Mac Pro was being assembled. And you wonder, is moving jobs back to the U.S. ever a possibility? Or, given that Apple is reportedly exploring alternatives to China, what would those alternatives be? Would they be Southeast Asia, Vietnam, et cetera?
I think the much bigger story around Apple and manufacturing is what you just brought up, Emily. It's really going to be about moving iPhone high-volume products, a portion of them, into Southeast Asia. And, to Carolina's point, look, you have to remember that the reason why a lot of manufacturing doesn't happen in the U.S. is because most all of the components, especially the ones that actually have weight and are expensive to ship, are made in China. You've got Intel chips and a few other components from the U.S., but most everything else is made in China, so it's significantly easier to put those pieces there. Some of those chips and other components are now being made in Southeast Asia, and it's just physically much closer to move parts around. And there's a whole supply chain built around that. But this process takes years, if not decades, so even that transition that's been talked about is going to be slow. Final manufacturing of the Mac Pro is like a decimal of a decimal of a decimal in terms of the overall impact, in terms of jobs and everything else. So I think that's not the big question. The big question is, what does Apple do longer term with these other supply chain issues? And ultimately, the other big question that we haven't talked about yet is robotics and the notion of these things being assembled automatically. And even there, the question is, if they bring it back to the U.S., they'd have to do it in such a way that maybe the final assembly is there, but that's sort of, as even Apple said, look, that's a small piece of the overall puzzle. If all the components and pieces that you need are near one place, it just makes sense to build things there.
Right, and I know you're about to take off for a trip to China, so tell us what you see.
Yes, exactly.
Carolina, so far, this has been reported out of Asian newspapers, but do you think in any scenario that Apple will realistically move production of its big ticket items outside of China to Southeast Asia or elsewhere over the next several years, given the political tensions?
I think there's always opportunity to look at other markets from a job perspective and cost opportunity. Southeast Asia has become extremely popular with some vendors, but to Bob's point, it takes years to shift. It doesn't happen overnight. Keeping your opportunity open, given your options open, given what has happened this year, it's certainly something that is going to be on most manufacturers' mind going forward.